Navy was seeking men like Marc Brunel to help give them an advantage over their French counterparts. Whilst working with the Royal Navy, Marc had invented a series of machines for making pulley blocks for ships. These significantly increased the quality and rate of their production and gave the Royal Navy a new advantage. At Portsmouth, the Royal Navy's headquarters, Marc Brunel was given permission by the Admiralty to set up a factory in which his inventions would be used to produce parts for the Navy. Marc and Sophie therefore moved to Portsmouth to be close to Marc's new place of work. After settling down, Sophie and Marc soon began to raise a family. They had 3 children, Sophia, Emma, and of course Isambard. However, soon after Isambard's birth, Marc decided to move his family to Chelsea in London. Marc was exceedingly interested in his children's education, and for much of his early childhood Isambard was educated by his father. When Marc was young, he had fallen out with his own father, a prosperous farmer, because Marc wanted to become an engineer, whilst his father thought that he should stay to continue the family business. Marc therefore was determined his own son should be encouraged towards intellectual pursuits from a young age. Marc taught his son complex concepts from an early age in order that he might have all necessary tools required for success in this rapidly changing world. By the age of 4, Isambard was taught drawing and observational techniques. By 8, he had learned to be capable mathematician and even seemed to be able to proficiently comprehend the basics of Euclidean geometrical theories. When his father would take Isambard for walks, the two would identify buildings with interesting architecture, and Marc would encourage his son to draw them and identify any faults in their structure. Isambard's understanding of the new industrialising world around him grew further as his father began to introduce him to the basic principles of engineering. Marc, as a Frenchman, also decided to teach his son French as a second language, as a way of not only providing him with a further skill, but also allowing his son to have a connection to his familial heritage. Isambard had shown remarkable ability to learn complex theories and concepts from a young age under his father's tutoring. However, when Isambard reached 8 years of age, his father Marc decided that it was time for him to enrol his son into formal education of the highest quality. Marc himself had received an excellent education during his youth in France, and knew how valuable and indeed rare it was to have the opportunity for a good education. Therefore, Isambard was subsequently sent to a prestigious boarding school in the East Sussex town of Hove. Here, Isambard received a thorough education in the classics. A classical education entailed learning both Greek and Latin, and becoming familiar with the history and literature of ancient Greece and Rome. These two civilizations were considered to be the founders of Western civilization, and the rediscovered knowledge of the ancient Greek and Roman philosophers had helped bring Europe out of the Middle Ages, through the Enlightenment, and into this new age of invention and industry. A classical education was considered essential at this time for any student wishing to attend university. Isambard revealed himself to be a highly promising student whilst at Hove. He quickly grasped the curriculum and even began to pursue his own intellectual interests outside of class. In his spare time, Isambard would wander around the town, creating a survey of all the buildings, analysing their architecture and assessing their structural integrity. Isambard once even astounded his classmates when he accurately predicted the collapse of a building opposite the school by calculating its structural weaknesses. The seed of intellectual curiosity planted by his father was growing, and when he eventually graduated from the boarding school, Isambard decided to seek out further education elsewhere. At aged 14, Isambard set sail for France to begin his university education and enrolled himself first at the University of Caen in Normandy, then later at Lycée Hendry IV in Paris. When Isambard completed his studies in Paris, he decided to seek further education in engineering and applied to study